Welcome back here at Goldberg. Today we'll be discussing Trump's cabinet thus far, my thoughts. Whether they're actually going to be confirmed is a different question, but let's just march right into it. RFK Jr. This is one I certainly did not expect, and it will be very controversial. I struggle to see how he's going to get confirmed, although it's not impossible. The reason being, RFK, even if he didn't change a single policy, but he just talks, is going to do grievous damage to the food and drug industry, to the way things are meant to be according to the egg sperms out there. So they're going to be lined up. Much money, much lobbying, attempting to take the wind out of his sails. As to this Department of Government Efficiency, it follows with what I was talking about. You have a big emphasis on deregulation in 2025. Now, Raimi Swamy with his Sensodyne smiles going around saying there's going to be wholesale deletions of agencies. This sounds preposterous. If you recall, even the Path to Prosperity, the Ryan Plan, which was some vague restructuring of Medicare and then freezing spending increases over time, that was a non-starter. So actually wholesale cutting departments and agencies on a short-term basis, that is probably not going to occur unless there's some legal elements that I am not privy to where they can do it unilaterally. I was one of the first people, if not the first, to talk about litigating in relation to the Impoundment Act so you could, at one level, set money aside. But in terms of actually eliminating stuff, you need the Congress. And the problem is that it's a slender majority that continues to be eroded as Trump makes these cabinet appointments. You have special elections. What if they don't go your way? And it still somewhat hobbles you just at the get-go. You can recall with Obamacare, they only passed it 217 to 213, the repeal. So the numbers do matter. And as much as you can find waste here or there, the big problem is going to be Medicare, which are they going to touch it? It's a third rail. Project 2025 indicates they want to make Medicare Advantage the default plan. There was a study that came out, I want to say in 21, that said the government was paying even more into those plans for sick people. And you might go, well, in the free market, that's what's supposed to happen. But from a taxpayer standpoint, is it really beneficial? We also need Social Security to be a 401k program because we lose out on so many returns, whether you put it in Vanguard or gold or Bitcoin. It's really not fair. And it also incentivizes the push for mass immigration because you need more taxpayers to prop up the retiring generations. With that being said, Dogecoin itself is on the upswing. Could we see a dollar, 5, 10, 50? 50 would be much desired. I'd welcome that 100%. Of course, who knows what the state of the economy would be if Doge hits that figure, but we can all dream, can we not? Rocket Lab, I've made a bunch of money thus far. I expect it to go further. And there's some others I've already gotten into a few months ago, some more that I will in coming days. I expect South America, assuming not a total meltdown, will get increased investment from the US and China. So I had ARGT, made some, transferred out of it, then it goes up another $19. Like, gee whiz, thanks, Millet. But I could see Chile with Boris. He's going to be out in a couple of years. More than likely, you'll get Evelyn Matei or Cost as presidents, and they failed to do their overhaul of the Constitution. So I wouldn't be totally shocked if they start growing more. Brazil as well. Brazil's fund is down. Now, it's always a risk, but they do pay large dividends in the interim, so it's something to consider. I haven't jumped at Brazil quite yet. In addition, I'm planning to investigate meme coins more so. It's a hassle I've tried in the past. You have to like buy Ethereum or BNB, transfer it. There's these pricey gas fees, but the returns are insane. So if you can make it through all that minutia, it might be worthwhile. And just a side point on X, I think I'm going to block anyone who talks about politics or race this, race that, and focus just on the finance because you really need to be budgeting time correctly. You can get lost in these mazes of content or manosphere, and it's just not really productive in the grand scheme of things, even if it is interesting. Proceeding on, so Susie Wiles, probably a rhino, but she might be good at her job if she can control access to Trump. Mark Meadows was a disaster because he allowed all these idiots like Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani to gaslight Trump in 2020 and make stupid decisions. Trump's the type of guy that needs to be told, no, shut up, you're not getting your way, because otherwise he's going to self destruct. As with Mike Pence. Oh, Pence is a traitor. No, Pence is just a super religious guy who believes in an idea of America that probably hasn't existed for decades, if it ever did. And he had a difference of opinion on a legal matter. Most of the evidence is that Pence was correct, mind you, but because he doesn't do what Trump wants, he's a traitor, and it's just kind of interesting. As deputy chief of staff, you've got Mr. Miller, who was the one that saved the first Trump administration on immigration. Hopefully, he starts pushing for restrictions on legal migration. That's what I've been hearing, and that's very positive. Homan as border czar, is he going to really have authority, or is that more of a the government's going to do something type position? Remains to be seen. And I don't understand putting Noam as DHS secretary. Did she give some nocturnal favors to Trump? I mean, she's not a competent governor. She showed that with COVID, with the trans athletes, and she supposedly is smashing Corey Lewandowski. Although, I mean, she's compromised. And it seems Trump likes people that he has something on because they're easier to control, as opposed to, let's say, Jeff Sessions, who was good at his job and he was called a traitor because he followed proper legal procedure. If you are the subject of an investigation as a lawyer, you remove yourself from control of that investigation. That's the proper thing to do if you have ethics. Well, he's a traitor, he betrayed me, that kind of mentality. Okay, so as to the foreign policy team, Stefanik, clearly Care Bear Land First, Bush administration staffer. Rubio, not much different. A new American century tied up in all those interventionist ideas. But let's stop there for a second. Neocon versus non interventionist. What does that mean precisely? Is neocon land wars in the Middle East? Is it just funding militants? Is it doing color revolutions, exporting globo homo? There's a tendency for some of these America firsters to throw everything in one cauldron, and it's like they don't quite grasp realpolitik. Fukuyama was out recently going, oh, it's the end of liberalism. Dude, shut the hell up. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. The only good book he came out with was that identity one. But as I was having a discussion with someone recently, let's say you believe in non-intervention. Now, we lost 40 plus thousand people to preserve this peninsula in South Korea. So it's modern and pro-capitalist, democratic. We're operating on the assumption that North Korea wouldn't have gone the Vietnam or the China route and at least economically opened up to some extent. We try to replicate that with Vietnam. It failed miserably. So then post-Vietnam, a lot of people go, oh, don't do it. Just don't get involved. But what's the consequence of that? Fukuyama's end of history thesis held that after the Soviet Union, if you just encourage democracy, capitalism, they'll all be aligned with the US. You'll have less security problems. There'll be more cooperation. And while it sounds good, the United States is in such poor financial shape that if you stopped engaging with the world, if you cut off this foreign aid to corrupt people who are fair weather friends, would we not suffer financially if we didn't, before that, get our fiscal house in order? The idea that, oh, the US withdraws and other powers don't take their place is just totally nonsensical. And that's why many of these people will come up with absolutely ignorant takes on the world. Like, for instance, Russia was being provoked by NATO. Russia did nothing wrong. Dude, Russia's been provoking NATO and other states for years, well before even 2014. The idea that Putin is some pro-Christian saving the West type. No, he's not. He's out for his country's interests, like China's investing around the world for their own geopolitical strategic interests. That does not mean that they're the good guys. The attempt to always create this silly dichotomy is what gets a lot of people just, tangled up and frankly ineffectual. Because Putin showed he didn't have a problem slaughtering a bunch of Slav Christians for his own objectives. You can try to blame NATO all you want, and there's blame there, but there's also blame for Russia's own behavior. And a lot of these conservatives want to pretend that doesn't exist because it doesn't fit the anti-soy Biden narrative. In that sense, I wonder, should we be completely trying to withdraw and cut everything off, because are we not going to come down with a very hard landing financially if people say, well, you're not coercing us with sanctions or the military anymore, you don't have influence here, we'll just go for the stronger horse? And that's something that I think has to be balanced. No matter how much you want to say, oh, yeah, we shouldn't. I agree, we shouldn't. But what are the short term consequences of just not engaging at all and then seeming like you're not reliable on the global stage? That's going to affect more than just the defense contractors. It could also affect your checkbook, the prices of things. So let me know what you think about that. Um, I'm bothered by this tendency for people to always want to do that, this side or that, and they don't understand the intricacies. You saw that with the whole promotion of BRICS. Yeah, Russia and China to an extent belong there. South Africa is a joke. They can't even run their own energy sector properly. Brazil, hit or miss. India is really more of a labor provision type power because they have so much population, but they've got a lot of issues as far as religious and ethnic conflicts. It's hard to do business there because of the bribery of different government officials on various levels. So, whether they're going to successfully detach the world from the dollar is something we'll have to wait and see. In terms of the defense establishment, obviously that guy Waltz is more of a traditional interventionist. He wanted to extend the Afghan war. There's excitement over Tulsi Gabbard. I will withhold too much judgment. However, keep in mind, she was not made Chia Seed director. She was made DNI. Chia Seed is going to be Ratcliffe, who is a big Care Bear Land First type. Tulsi Gabbard, who is not anti-Care Bear Land, mind you, she's just a little bit more of a skeptic when it comes to confronting Russia and Syria. But Tulsi Gabbard is DNI. DNI was one of those, much like DHS, after 9/11, they said, oh, the government needs to do something. And so they create this supra bureaucratic body that's supposed to help with intelligence sharing. They didn't need to do this. They could have just passed a law that said anything urgent has to be distributed, and if you don't do it, you're going to be sent to prison for 20 years. Like there's no, oh, I was just lazy, I didn't push a button, I didn't send an email. I suspect she might end up getting neutralized by these other people that are being appointed. And in fact, there was commentary, I believe, on Care Bear Land television. They said it's almost like the Care Bear Prime Minister is making Trump's cabinet appointments for him, which might be some truth to it. So leads us to this individual, Pete Hegseth. Hegseth, I read his book, War on Warriors, and let's be fair, he'd be better at running the DoD than, say, that whatever clown they had beforehand. If you were in the military, I think you could rely on him more so. He is a combat veteran, Minnesota National Guard, if I'm not mistaken. So that part is good. Now, he's also extremely befitting of that kind of politics of spectacle that Trump is good at, in the sense that he's got the Christian tattoos and he's wearing the suits with the American flag on the inside and camo ties, and he's doing the marathons and all that. And it just seems like he's built as conservative prawn. But then what is he actually saying? Well, he goes, in the military, we believe in equality. We're not like that racist Woodrow Wilson. You hear Millie going that he reads Mao and Lenin. What's next? Soldiers reading Mustache Man, Protocols of Zion, GTFO, brah. Or, if there was a guy in my unit who was a white supremacist, I'd kick his ass out. Like, this is the guy they're accusing of being some radical right-winger? Not to mention emblazoned with all the crosses, and he's cucked at least two of his wives, and this is a good conservative. And there were conservatives, Christian conservatives on Twitter, defending him like he's this, oh yeah, I don't care what he does in his personal life. Well, I get it. I don't personally care because politicians are corrupt, but you know how it is, you present all this crap, you wear it on your sleeve, but you're a dirtbag? Just saying. The more salient point is that he blames Iran for October 7th. No joke. He also is on video saying there's no real daylight between being an American patriot and a Zionist. And he was telling the Care Berries, go ahead, build a third temple. America's behind you. This is psychotic. You want to bring about an apocalypse? Yeah, like tell the Muslim cells we're just going to build a third temple. That's a smart idea from the American Defense Secretary. My suspicion is Iran's already weakened. They lost the president, lost some member of the cabinet, I believe. They have lost a number of senior generals. They've been unable to maintain their own security against Care Bear assassinations. Whether it comes in the form of the Ayatollah gets assassinated in near future, whether it's an actual land invasion, I'm not sure that will happen, but it could be increased precision strikes, cripple their economy, some kind of color revolution. You might go, well, Putin won't allow that. But what if they say, we'll give you a little bit more of a free hand on Ukraine, and you can take some of the territories, leave a rump state for poor Zelensky, and just don't cause trouble when it comes to Iran. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, but it looks like Iran and possibly Syria, despite Tulsi Gabbard being in the cabinet, there's a very real chance that Syria is also on the agenda because that's the last roadblock to what the more extreme fundamentalist Care Berries who control Netanyahu's government are trying to achieve. And so we get to the sordid question of Matteo Gaietz. This is going to be long-winded, so if you're not interested, switch it off, play some video games, smoke some pot, watch some ASMR. You know how they said Trump Russia? And like, oh, you made it up. Oh, there's no proof. Well, this is because the Democrats, being imbeciles, chose to focus on finding a smoking gun that would show Donald Trumpy getting in bed with that Hoppe cell, Vladimir Putin. And when that didn't materialize, it made them look bad. Of course, there are very intimate connections between Trump and the Russians. But not the Russians you're thinking of, not Boris who drinks his vodka and says, oh, Russia, he's strong. Back in the 1970s, there was this push for the Jackson-Vanik Amendment, which was designed to pressure the Soviet Union to let Care Bears emigrate. And indeed, many of them did so to Care Bear land in the US in particular, some went to the UK. But part of this coterie were a large number of Care Bear gangsters. And the Italians, traditionally in the US, they had been into the small businesses, waste management, laundromats, clubs. But the Care Bear gangsters benefited, number one, the spotlight was on the Italians because a certain person, Rudolph Giuliani, was prosecuting them aggressively in the 80s. The Care Bears decided to focus on real estate, investment banking, more of the financial white-collar type crimes. One of them in particular, he's actually a Georgian Care Bear, but Georgian as in Georgia close to Russia, not Atlanta type Georgian. He was a childhood friend of Mikhail Cohen, Trump's personal attorney. This guy was part of the Trump Soho property, and like most of these powerful Care Bears, he's a contributor to Shabbat or Chabad, which is this large multinational organization that promotes Care Bear interests. It's been investigated multiple times, different locations for fraud and corruption. By the way, many of the quote-unquote Russian oligarchs also contribute to it. Roman Abramovich, Leviev, even Putin is known to support the organization. Chabad, for the longest time was dominated by a certain Rabbi Schneerson. Schneerson was a spiritual and political advisor to someone you might have heard of, Netanyahu, Benjamin. A Netanyahu lifelong friend of the Kushners. And as you know, the Kushners, who also support Chabad, the Kushners are married into the Trump family. This is a side point, but you know, Krispy Kreme, Chris Christie put Jared Kushner's dad in prison. That's why Christie, who was a competent person, was kicked out of the first Trump administration. Another important name is Mogilevich. He was a Care Bear gangster. He worked hand in hand with a certain Robert Maxwell. Maxwell confirmed Mossad agents. When he died, he was commemorated by the president of Care Bear Land. Maxwell perpetuated a number of frauds in the UK, raiding pension funds to cover up his crimes. Maxwell is the father of Ghislaine, who was getting smashed and coordinating with a certain Jeffrey Epstein on his trafficking operations. Epstein's an interesting character, isn't he? So he has no college degree, but he is hired at a private school that at the time the headmaster is a certain Donald Barr. Donald Barr moonlights as a science fiction writer, and at least one novel is about sex slaves on other planets. Epstein advances his operations, and he's a close associate of Lex Wexner, who owns Victoria's Secret. Some have accused Wexner of permitting Epstein to use his properties for these illicit activities. And let's see, Victoria's Secret going after underage women. It's not terribly hard to see that playing out. Epstein was a client of the same banks, PR firms used by the Kushners and the Trumps. Of course, as you know, Trump said he was a good friend of Epstein at one time. Now, when you have the sweetheart deal with Alex Acosta, where Epstein really didn't get sent to prison, he got some kind of work release, he was not charged with any serious crimes. What Acosta said after the fact is, they told me Epstein belonged to the chia seeds. Why is this relevant? I didn't mention that with Donald Barr. Donald Barr was an OSS agent. That's basically the forerunner of the chia seed group. And who in 2019 was coming out saying, no, 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 we don't have to revisit the Epstein deal. Well, bygones be bygones. Matt Gaetz. Oh, interesting. Matt Gaetz, who is a politician in Florida. His father, also a very well-connected politician in Florida. The Care Bear Mafia is known to have much influence in Florida as well. So that's a point. But this is happening with Epstein, and they choose to revisit. There's the pressure. Epstein is arrested, and he's in the custody of the Federal Bureau of Prisons. This is controlled by the Justice Department, and this Justice Department at the time is led by a certain Billy Barr, son of Donald Barr. Billy Barr, of course, was at one point a chia seed agent, and Donald Trump is president. Epstein mysteriously dies. And my conclusion, seeing all these facts, is that it was liberal left and the Clintons that did it, and Trump was innocent. He had no part in this. He's the freedom fighter for the common man. Another point I should note, Alan Dershowitz. Dershowitz, who penned an article saying you should change the statutory grape laws, he was accused of being a client of Epstein, and he, of course, vehemently denied it, tried to defame the woman or the girl who had made that accusation. He was one of Trump's impeachment defense attorneys, if I'm not mistaken. So he's a big Zionist, like Lex Wexner is a big Zionist. And so, you really have to ask the question at some point, maybe the reason why Matt Gaetz is being chosen, well, he's going to trigger the left. He's going to trigger the left. Okay, maybe it's because he's guilty of stuff. Now, some people might go, well, those laws are ridiculous if it's just, they're 17 or whatever. Yeah, but are these guys going to actually try to change it for regular people? Or are they just going to essentially be telling you, don't do that, but I will? So it makes sense why Trump would choose Gaetz for this position. Yeah, maybe he's going to defenestrate a couple of progressive Care Bear attorneys in the DOJ or the FBI, but he's going to protect Care Bear interests. These people are all intricately tied together. That's why, as I said, look at it, economic benefits, whatnot. Maybe they're going to deport some people, fine. I'm not it's glasses half full. At the same time, know who's in charge and why they're being chosen, because these people, they're out for their own interests and not your own. That's all I'm saying. Let me know what you think of Trump's cabinet thus far.